Alright, in this video I'm going to try best I can to explain how to go through the electrical end of your starter for your Mopars, 318s, 360s, I've heard 440s, somewhere in the 70 range to like early 80s. Give it that old school sound before they upgraded the starters to spin even faster. I didn't find a lot of stuff online, so I figured I'd try to help out a little bit here with this. Forgive my video because I'm doing it from my phone, and it's not the best quality. And of course, I'm not going to waste your time telling you how to take the starter out, because if you're going this far as to try to rebuild a starter, I think you're probably going to be able to figure out how to pull it out of the truck or the car or whatever you're doing this on. I took this apart already. First thing that I had found was the brush here, the actual tab, the spring on it holds the spring. The little plastic tab had broken off, so the brush wasn't even making contact. So I knew that automatically. I was going to have to get another brush holder. But that stench of burnt wiring went through the whole starter as soon as I pulled it apart. And lo and behold, it cooked the windings and threw all the solder out of the commutator all the way around. So luckily I was able to find another armature, tested it out, checks good. There are plenty of videos online showing you how to test these to make sure they're good. Don't second guess yourself. Make sure you get a good one. Don't try to cheap out on this. You're going to end up in a world of hurt. So, swapping that out. Luckily, the same place had a brand new brush holder as well. I'm going to install that on it. There are a few things that are a little wonky. You see, there's a little teeny hole right there, and this is your starter solenoid. This little wire, you have to fish it in from the back side through. Difficult doing with one hand and my phone. That little hole right there. Once you fish it through, it comes up and it wraps around this. It wasn't soldered in or anything on the original, so I'm not going to do that on this one. And just bend the tab over. As you can see, I had to bend it up a little bit to get it unwound, but so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here, put a little bit together, and explain from there. Alright, forgive my camera angles the last time. Now I've gone ahead and put starter solenoid back on. The bolts that go through it, there's threads actually in the solenoid itself. Don't over tighten it, obviously, because this is plastic. You don't want to take the chance of cracking something you just spent 15 to 20 bucks for. Not a good time. Alright, there's your pin. It had to go through that hole. And the wire, as I said, I fished it up through the hole and wrapped it around the bar and bent the bar over so that it will clear when you go to put it back in the starter. Now, there's a little ring right here. I'll show you on the old one because I don't care if it pops out. There's a little ring. I placed it back on that when you go to push the armature through, it'll pop out, and when you're pushing the armature through, and the brushes will make contact with the commutator bars. Now, luckily, they went ahead and cleaned this up for me, but usually when you take these apart, the commutator bars will be black from a little bit of the carbon from the brushes, and that's okay as long as there's no deep gouges or broken bars or anything like that. As far as going to reassemble this, I'm going to have to let you guys go for a moment and do a little bit more and come right back. All right, now I've got the starter solenoid back in the gear housing itself. Tighten the bolts down, or the nuts down on the bolts right here, making sure not to get too tight and crush the brush holder. Inside, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there's a little bushing or a little fiber bushing there. There's a couple of them in here. They go on the ends of the armature. Forgive me, got something in my throat. Make sure you line it up so that you can push the armature through, but you know, make sure that it doesn't fall out or into, like it did for me. It wanted to keep falling down to where the solenoid actuates in here, so I kept wondering why I couldn't push it down, and then realized I was trying to push it on that bushing. Beautiful. I've just got this sitting in the field windings at the moment. Maybe not the best practice, but do with what you got when you got it. All right, this is the tail cap. Now I've already checked. You've got bushings, metal bushings, brass, I believe they are, inside here. You need to make sure that you don't have a lot of play, which this doesn't have, thank God, because I really don't want to have to go through and try to pull that bushing out. I already checked the one that's down in this end. You're going to need to lube the ends of this shaft with a high temperature grease. I'm going to use, well, Advanced Auto Parts. Since I don't use a lot of consumables like grease, I'm just going to use some of the ceramic brake lubricant. It's good for high heat, won't break down, won't dry out. And it was like 99 cents, so better than buying a whole tube that will probably sit around and go bad or just never get used. Alright, I'm going to stick this armature in after I lube it up, and I'll be right back. Just a little bit. Just a little dab will do. Alright, now I got the armature set in. I did want to share one thing with you that I may not have said. This little piece that's holding the brushes, you see it's got the tabs that hold it out. Now, when it falls, as you're pushing the armature through, there's some bushings that go over here that go between the commutator and this piece right here. There's two bushings in this one. I don't know if they're all that way, but I put the bigger bushing along this part right here and the smaller bushing closer to the commutators, just so that less chance of it arcing if it comes across this. When this falls, it'll fall down in a little slot and it'll just kind of sit down in there, and I'm sure it can rattle around. You don't want it shorting out. And literally you just get it in place and it'll fall right through. The brushes will snap up against the commutator. You're all together. It's lubed up in the bottom half. I'm going to lube up the top half of this shaft after I get the field windings back on. When you're putting the field windings on, pay attention. There's a little pin right there on the field windings. This side goes right here into that groove. So if I flip it around and over, it can only go one way. Now, when you start to come over, there's a little screw hole here. I got to pull the screw because it didn't come with a new screw. Imagine that. Focus. Alright. The screw goes and connects to the field windings right there. So the screw head is going to go on this side, go through, in contact with that. Alright, I'm going to get this together and I'll be right back. Alright, that was a little bit of a feat, but it wasn't too difficult. I'm getting ready to lube up the back shaft and put the plate back on. And don't forget about your bushing. I'm going to go ahead And place the bushing on there now. And give the shaft a little bit of grease, just a little bit. There we go. And spread that around. Just got to make sure everything's real clean. You don't want a lot of goo as you're putting this back together. And just for GP right here, and put a little in the bushing, just a little. It's enough to get it wet. I've heard of people taking these things apart brand new. For some reason they seemed dragging and they were curious. Took it apart and found out they didn't grease any of the bushings after it was remanned. Beautiful. Alright, now the cap goes on, sliding it over the shaft. Trying to do this one-handed is crazy. What I wouldn't give for a mount. Well, let's try this, because I'm not trying to keep putting you guys away. If I had a mount, I wouldn't be doing that. Use this little spring. Yeah. Oh, I don't want to do that. There we go. Okay. Now, if I remember correctly, the through bolts, which I cleaned up, go between either side of these field windings and screw into the casing. So you're going to want to get out of my way. You're going to want to get this on. Come on, baby. There we go. So where they're kind of lined up, but you have some room to kind of wiggle it back and forth. With this starter, there was no gasket or anything that went along the back here. It just kind of fit in place. Coming apart there. So I'll try to fit a bolt through there and see if I can figure. Well, you can kind of see it going through right there. Oh, I thought I had it the first time. No such luck, sir. Not today. Let's see. Come on, just gotta fish for it. Yeah, I found it. I found it. Alright. Alright, I'm gonna do the same with the other bolt. And I'll show you what it looks like after it's finished. And we'll give it see if we can't give it a test and see how it goes. After it's all said and done, I'm putting it back in my truck. And whoop, can't show you license plates. My 77 Dodge. All right, be back in a second. All right, time to give her a test. Beautiful snowy day. Well, the snow is gone. The temperature went up. Virginia weather. What can I say? All right, when you're hooking this up to test, pretty obvious. Over here, everything goes to ground. So when you're hooking up your positive, make sure not to touch the ground anywhere. Ground hook to the case. There's your starter solenoid pin. All you've got to do is jump between the pin and this, and it should work. And then watch out, because these things are torquey. Yeah, buddy. And there you go. You can put her back in the truck and keep right on chooching. Alright, later. And one more side note, just to let you guys know. If you're trying to diagnose whether you've got a battery problem or starter problem, you've got your auto parts stores that'll check things for free. I thought this was a battery. Checked it out. Guess what? Battery was good. Great. So, replacing the starter became the next option I was thinking, but I said to myself, you know what? You really should check the wiring. And the wiring had actually already been replaced at one point by somebody, and yeah, they put a stereo in here, so yeah. But the wiring going down here was good, and I want to clean all of this up, of course. Maybe a little dielectrics grease to keep it from getting a little bit of elements in it. But the actual wire that goes from this starter relay down through a little hole in the frame and back to where the starter will go, that wire had split and corroded really badly, which would cause higher amperage to be pulled, and probably wasn't too healthy for the starter, as it was starved for voltage. Of course, being a brush down didn't help either. But either way, check your wires. Check your wires, check your connections. And another thing I saw here, see if I can zoom it in. Yeah, that negative cable, yeah, that little washer is supposed to cut through paint. It doesn't do any good if you put it on the wrong side of the bolt and the terminal. Yeah. Alright, fellas and ladies. Later.